Greetings to all Africans on the continent and across the world. This is King H. I have a discussion that I want to talk about, and the title of this discussion is Black Slavery Exists Today in Muslim Dominated African Nations. This article was taken from IsraelNationNews.com. It may be biased, but there's truth to this article. Before I continue, I wanted to say this is a Pan-African platform. Absolutely a Pan-African platform. And three strong Pan-Africanists who are pushing for African unity are Ploy Lumumba, Julius Malema, and Dr. Arkana Chihobori Quor. Three strong Pan-Africanists who are pushing for African unity and who have actually discussed in detail about the external enemy that we have in Africa. The external enemy that are destroying the unity of Africa and exploiting Africa, which being the West. Now you have China. And don't forget, you also have Arab nations, as well as those Arabs who were born in Africa, those African Arabs, African Arabs who were born in Africa, who their forefathers migrated from Arab nations and came to Africa and enslaved and killed so many Africans. But their children till today still do the same thing that their forefathers did to the forefathers of Africans and to the children of Africans. That still continues. But I want to say this to Ploy Lumumba, Julius Malema, and Dr. Arkana Chihobori Quor, who are strong Pan-African speakers who stand for Pan-African unity, that they may have examined the external enemy that we have in Africa, but they have not examined the internal enemies that we have in Africa. And one of the internal enemies that we have in Africa is Christianity and Muslim religion or Arab religion. Today, an estimated 529,000 to 869,000 black men, women, children are still slaves. They are bought, owned, sold, and traded by Arab and Muslim masters in 5 countries. These statistics estimate those enslaved in Algeria, Libya, Mauritania, and Sudan. It excludes Nigeria, for which there are no tangible estimates. Western human rights organizations and the mainstream media are practically and painfully silent on this matter. It does not fit with their focus on Western white sin. Here is a brief survey of the quasi-taboo topic. In Sudan, slavery remains painful vestige of the Second Sudanese Civil War 1983 to 2005. That's when the Arab Muslim government in north of the country declared jihad upon the black, largely Christian South. They killed perhaps 2.5 million people and enslaved as many as 200,000 black people. You see, Muslim religion, a religion that was forced down by Arabs to black people, and the mixed children of Arabs and Africans who think they are superior to the black Arabs continue with such savagery, with such action that is happening in these 5 or 4 nations in Africa. Pan-African unity is not possible. when our own black brothers still maltreated, still sold as slaves in the continent of Africa, and the African leaders are not speaking against such dehumanization. But when Chinese and the West does that to African people, they speak in a subtle, slow type of way. They don't speak with such vehement tone against such dehumanization. But African people must start speaking boldly against any dehumanization of African people on the continent or around the world. This is what African government and African leadership must do. Slave rescued by grassroots abolitionists tell horrific stories: abduction, beating, forced conversion to Islam, grueling labor, female genital mutilation, malnutrition, rape. Slave rescued by grassroots abolition tells horrific stories. The war ended in 2005. Black South Sudan became the world's newest nation in July 9th, 2011. Still, many black slaves remain the property of Arab masters across the new border in the north. The exact number is not known. As of 2006, James Ako Alik, a former Sudanese government minister, estimated that it could be as high as 35,000 people, black people in South Sudan, who are owned as slaves by Arab people or Arab masters. This must stop, and African people must speak against such evil acts against black people. In Mauritania, they have read about Mauritania and their slavery to black people. A very structure of society reinforces slavery. The very structure of society reinforces slavery. Over the centuries, a crew class system has evolved. Just like there's certain parts in India where they have, in India is mostly have a structured system, a structured class, where they have the light skin and dark skin. This is also practiced in Mauritania. The light-skinned Arabs, Bedouins, and the Arabis Berbers rule over the black former slaves. Those slaves have been forcibly Arabized over time. The free blacks in the South who refuse Arabization call themselves Negro Africans, and the black chattel slave class are at the bottom. The country is entirely Muslim. Islam theoretically forbids the enslavement of one Muslim by another. However, in the case, Arab racism supersedes adherence to the Sharia or Islamic law. According to the Muslim religion or Arab Islam religion, slavery is forbidden. But it's there, and they practice it on black people. In 2020, they still practice such evil, and our government, the African Union, does not speak about such dehumanization of African people. So what is the use of the African Union, and what is the use of the African government that sees such evil act against black people and cannot speak against it? In 1993, the U.S. State Department report estimated that between 30,000 to 90,000 blacks live as slaves owned by private masters. In 2012, the CNN investigation indicated that the number could be as high as 340,000 to 680,000 black people in Mauritania who are being used as slaves, who are owned as slaves in 2020. Can you believe that nonsense? No slave markets exist in Mauritania. All slaves are born in master's household. Pregnancies occur from the master's insemination of black slave women or through mandated breeding of slave couples. In the absence of open markets, slaves change hands quietly in individual sales. They also trade as substitutes for money in setting of gambling debts. They can even be rented. Islam is an evil religion. Islam is an evil religion. And it's not good for Africa or African people, because the African people get the short end of the stick with such demonic religion. With such demonic religion. It's unheard of. In our continent, Africa, black people are still being sold as slaves, and the government does not speak against it. Algeria and Libya, sub-Saharan Africans fleeing violence and poverty for Europe, are enslaved by Algeria and Libya. Arabs as they try to cross the Mediterranean. Today, according to the Global Slavery Index, around 106,000 black Africans are estimated to be enslaved in Algeria. Migrant women, but also children, both male and female, risk being forced into sexual slavery. Men perform unskilled labor. Those who avoid slavery are also subjected to virulent Arab racism. This was recently confirmed by a recent New York Times report. This further marginalizes the already destitute. Africans hoping for a better life in Europe also travel to Libya to be trafficked across the Mediterranean, often into Italy. Once there, some are enslaved by local Arabs and traffickers. As of 2016, according to UN, there are between 700,000 to 1 million black African migrants in Libya. The Global Slavery Index estimated many as 48,000 of them live as slaves of some nature. Survivors report torture, sex trafficking, and slavery. Some are even forced to become prostitutes only after they have reached their destination. The slave trade in Libya became international news when the CNN obtained video of an actual slave trade auction of 2017. So this shit has been going on, and the African Union does not speak against it. So how can Africa be united with such demonic action from those Arabs who came to Africa, enslaved Africans, and still continue to enslave Africa as of 2020? This shit still goes on. So Africa is like the most fucked up continent in the entire world. Arabs fucks African people. The West does. China now is involved. We are the most unwanted people in the whole fucking world. And our leaders can't do shit about it. Pan-African revolution is the key for the survival of the continent of Africa. Africans must wake up to the reality. In Nigeria, the long-running civil war between Muslim majority and the 40% Christian minority involves enslavement of Christian Nigerians. The taking of Christian slaves has become a source of compensation for Islamic fighters. The recent rise of jihad organizations like ISIS affiliated Boko Haram has been the main source of contemporary slave raids. The most infamous incident of the slave raid was Boko Haram's abduction of 276 Christian schoolgirls. It happened in the town of Chibok on April 14, 2014, inspired Michelle Obama's Bring Back Our Girls hashtag. Most slaves are young girls kidnapped and kept as concubines of the Islamic soldiers. Some of those prefer to become suicide bombers, escape the life of sex slave. Though the U.S. State Department of 2018 Human Rights Report on Nigeria mentioned that the number of slaves captured and owned by Boko Haram terrorists today could be in the thousand. The full number is as of now unknown. Arab religion, Islamic religion, Muslim religion, or even Christian religion do not play a good factor to African continent, African unity. It actually divides. It creates more division. Religion creates more division. And the people of Africa are suffering because of religion, because of Islamic religion, because of Arab religion. Slavery still continues. Our African leaders must speak against such evil acts, from Algeria to Nigeria to Mauritania and Sudan. All these evil acts happening in the continent of Africa, and the leadership of Africa is not speaking against. There's no solution in stopping the Jihad Act or the Jihad rebellion against African people, because they want to force down Islamic ways or Islamic laws. Africa are not Islams or Islamic people, they are not Arabs. They are African people. And the fact that Africa has Arabs in Africa does not mean that they have the right, the authority, the privilege to continue to do such evil acts against those people who are the natural owners of land. The entire Africa is owned by black people. But because Arabs who fled their own country and came to Africa in the numbers and then enslaved and maltreated so many Africans, they believe they have the right to continue to do such acts in the name of their fucked up God. This is bullshit. And this bullshit must stop. But it will not stop. The entire world is against black people. It will not stop until black people decide to rise up and make such actions against black people to stop. Pan-African religion, Pan-African revolution is the way forward for all black people around the world. We must stop such evil acts against us. The blueprint of how African people should be treated in the world was manifested by Westerners and Arabs. And they continue, the Arab people continue, and the West continue, and now China continues to think that they can maltreat us because they have put us at the bottom of the humanity chain. They have put us at the bottom. So the Arabs can smash all over us. The West can do the same. China can do the same. Asia can do the same. It don't matter, because we are black people, we're Africans. But no, life is war, African people. We must rise up and fight against our enemies, being internal or external. And the Arab nations in Africa who continue to do such evil acts on black people, on black continent, must stop. Algeria must stop such evil act. Libya must stop such evil act. As a matter of fact, Libya has been destroyed in the process of killing Gaddafi. And they still continue to do such evil act to black people. Without Pan-African unity, without uniting Africa through one leadership and one government, Africa would not become a superpower in the world and gain respect. And that will also include Libyan countries, Algerian countries will never get the respect they deem because they are not strong enough, powerful enough to do that on their own. Only through unity of the entire African continent can we have this strong superpower to sustain the livelihood of African people. But to do that, we must examine all the internal issues as well as the external issues while we work on uniting the African people. This is King Angel. Till next time.